Over the last week, we've seen an outpouring of grief, support and anger following the murder of 33-year-old Sarah Everard, who disappeared whilst walking home from a friend's house in south west London on the 3rd of March.
This weekend, the Duchess of Cambridge joined countless others paying tribute by leaving flowers in London's Clapham Common.
Well, as planned, Saturday night vigil in Sarah's memory was cancelled after the police raised concerns about social distancing. This didn't stop thousands descending on the Common, leading to clashes with the police and several arrests. The Prime Minister later said that these scenes were deeply concerning.
Well, in place of the vigil, the organisers instead asked people across the UK to light candles outside their homes to remember Sarah. Labour MP Harriet Harman was one of the many who did. She joins us now. Good morning, Harriet.
Hi, Harriet.
For joining us. Should that original vigil have gone ahead?
I think it should have done, but it should have been by agreement with the Metropolitan Commissioner liaising with the Reclaim These Streets, which is the organisation that wanted to hold the vigil. You know, they had all their stewards trained, they could have limited the numbers, they could have... But because she just did an outright ban on it, then the whole thing got out of control and was absolutely ended up how no one wanted it to be ended up. And I think actually she should sit down and talk with them now and actually agree for a vigil to go ahead. They've asked
she being Cressida Dick.
Oh, yes, Cressida Dick, yes. Yeah. The Reclaim These Streets have asked to meet the Metropolitan Commissioner and she hasn't even replied to their letter. I mean, this needs to get sorted out because so many women obviously do want to say, not only are we mourning for Sarah Everard, but also we don't feel safe on the streets because there isn't proper protection in the law, and that's something we can change.
And that is something that you are hoping to change. Just talk to us about this bill that you're hoping to get passed.
Well, the government were introducing a bill with a whole load of other measures in it this afternoon in the House of Commons, but in the wake of the awful outpouring of concern that there's been and people telling their stories on social media about what's happened to them, you know, schoolgirls being followed home in the dark when they're in their school uniform by men curb crawling, and that's not even against the law. So actually we've got an opportunity to make some changes. So, I mean, it is odd, isn't it, that if a man curb crawls because he's looking to buy sex, if he's curb crawling for prostitution and it interferes with the neighbourhood, that is a criminal offence. But if a man is curb crawling a schoolgirl and leering at her and calling at her to get into his car, that is not an offence, and that should change. And also, harassment is an offence if there's a repeated course of conduct, if it's somebody you know and it keeps harassing you. But to harass somebody you don't know on the street is not an offence. And I mean, you know, cars and vans, they ought to be for driving from place to place, not for winding down your window, making young girls after dark, going home from school, their lives are misery. I mean, why should they have to live in fear? So we've got this bill in the House of Commons this afternoon, and we can actually make some changes. And I'm feeling quite optimistic from hearing what the Home Secretary has said, from hearing what the Prime Minister has said. This is a moment where actually women are sharing their everyday experience, and actually there are now women in the House of Commons and in government who can make this change. So
it's taken the tragic death of Sarah Everard to highlight this, and once again we have the death of someone that sparks a conversation, a lot more awareness. Vitally important there. Should a woman, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, resign?
Well, she's going to give reports to the Home Secretary and the Mayor of London, and in a way, I don't want to get into the situation of it's all about Cressida Dick, should she go or shouldn't she? I do think she should sit down and have a meeting with the vigil organisers, and I think she woefully mishandled it. And there's lots of reports that the borough police, the borough command unit as they're called, had a really good relationship with the organisers, and somehow the Met HQ got involved and the whole thing went wrong. But I think that the issue is how we recognise the reality for women and girls on the street now, especially after dark. You know, why should women have to go the longer route because it's the busier route home rather than the short route? You know, why should they have to take a cab or an Uber just for a very short distance? Why should they have to have their keys in their hand so that they're kind of at the ready?
That's a good point, because you say that, and then you've also said that you feel that men really need to take a look at themselves, and maybe that actually this is a time for them to question their own behaviour and change their behaviour, not women.
Well, of course, most men don't do this. This is not male behaviour generally. This is men who actually do it but can get away with it. Because there's nothing in the law. If a girl was able to take a picture of a number plate on her phone when she was being curb crawled, and if your licence was revoked, your driver's licence, if you were done for curb crawling a schoolgirl, it would stop. The trouble is, it's not against the law, and some men do it and think they can get away with it, and they can get away with it. So we need to change the law. And women have been just putting up with this for years. That's the thing. Women and girls probably not even telling their mum, certainly not telling the school. I mean, how many school assemblies have discussed the issue with girls? How do you get home safely? What is your experience? It's one of these things where until Sarah Everard's tragic murder, women haven't really shared. They just gritted their teeth and got on with it. So now, actually, there's an opportunity for change, and I hope it will happen. I think the government must listen.
Thank you, Harriet. Thank you for joining us. As calls for change continue, we're joined now by women's rights campaigner Soma Sara. Following her own experience of sexual harassment, she started a viral online campaign for women to share their stories with one another. And she joins us now. And thank you for joining us this morning. So this is an online platform that you've created. It's called Everyone's Invited. And this is where women can share their stories. Just explain why you created it in the first place and what you hope it achieves.
First of all, I just wanted to say I'm so grateful that you're helping me expose rape culture, and thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
So Everyone's Invited was started actually back in June after I had shared my experiences with my friends, and we realised that so many of us had similar experiences of rape culture and sexual abuse growing up. And, you know, I just decided to post about it online on Instagram, and I got a really overwhelming response from people I knew and old friends. So I started Everyone's Invited as a more permanent Instagram for people to share their stories.
What surprised me, Summer, was that we were looking at the test, because they take the form of testimonials, and that's what you're posting. Is the frequency and the amount of times that this is happening now? You know, you look at the sort of generation that's growing up now, teenagers who seem to be very much aware of making sure that there is respect and that they respect each other. And then you look at this other side in all sorts of schools, some very, very wealthy schools, yet this appears to be commonplace.
Yes, I mean, at the end of the day, I think this is a global issue. It's a universal problem, and, you know, it exists everywhere. And I don't think we can really point the finger at an individual or an institution or a certain demographic, because if we do that, we risk making these cases seem like they're rare when really they're not. It happens all the time.
And you're hoping with this that you can change attitudes, because an awful lot of the women who were writing these testimonials, there was a lot of blame there on themselves, there was a lot of guilt, and you want to challenge those attitudes.
Absolutely. You know, rape culture is when thoughts and behaviours and beliefs have the effect of normalising and trivialising sexual violence. So, for example, if behaviours like the non-consensual sending of intimate photos or upskirting are normalised, then this can have the effect of having a gateway to more extreme behaviours such as assault and rape.
And also, there is this culture of blaming the victims or not necessarily believing the victims.
Absolutely. We live in a shame culture where survivors are just not believed, and they feel that they just can't come forward with their stories. So the culture just continues and prevails. And, you know, this is also not exclusively a female movement. Everyone is invited to this dialogue. Boys, girls, parents, teachers, older generations and younger generations. Because, you know, if we really want to dismantle and eradicate this culture, we need everyone to take part. And, you know, many people are complicit. It can be slut shaming, victim blaming, continuing to be friends with abusers who you know are guilty. All of these things just perpetuate this culture.
And actually, you have had boys and men who have reached out to you because they've wanted to address the role that they've played within this.
Absolutely. I've had an overwhelmingly positive response from a lot of boys I grew up with and know, and who have recognized their behaviors and how, some of their actions and behaviors may have contributed to this toxic environment, which, had the effect of trivializing sexual assault, which means it can thrive and exist.
Do you worry that, because the website doesn't name anybody, so nobody's identified, apart from it does name the schools. Do you ever worry that because people aren't named, that you therefore sort of create this environment within the school where they're guessing, who is it, who is this person, oh my gosh, and there's this culture of people blaming people or suspecting people of doing something?
I think just, one of the most important things to just make very clear is this is anti-cancel culture. And, it's just so important that, we can all just have these conversations. And, the most important thing is being able to talk about these things. And if we can talk about them, it can change.
That in itself is obviously vital, and the conversations that we're having, the reason we're doing this today, and have done it in the past, I've got to say, before the tragic death of Sarah. But to pick up finally on Holly's point there, what you're doing, excuse me, is incredibly important. But what you're also doing is naming schools. So isn't there a danger naming schools that, yes, that will probably, and I think has, started the conversation within those schools, but much like the story we were talking about last week when a finger was pointed in one specific case, but you don't know who it was pointed at, that there is this danger of pointing a finger at a school and not being able to get to who that person was?
I just think that this really, the impact of the naming of schools has sparked this incredible conversation where thousands, we now have over 4,000 testimonies of survivors have come forward and, demanded change from their schools from within. And, if we try and shame people or ostracize them, it's just, it's really counterproductive because, we're isolating people and we're not helping things move forward for change. Whereas really what we've done now, we've sparked this incredible conversation. And even just having this opportunity to talk about it on this platform with you guys is amazing. And I'm so just proud and amazed by how brave every single one of those survivors who have come forward to share their testimony on that platform. It's just amazing. And at the end of the day, it has been, difficult, stressful, but it is uplifting and just amazingly encouraging.
Thank you, Soma. Thank you very much.